Summon the succubus. A mysterious gate materializes near the kobold camp at midnight. A6 is the first to spot it from his scouting tower, but is afraid to investigate by himself. He runs to the sleeping quarters to wake up his friends. What the kobolds don't know is that the gate is about to summon Calypso to their dimension, a succubus demon with a lot of pent-up sexual desire. The kobolds need to decide quickly who should investigate the portal as it's beginning to glow with ethereal blue energy. Optional A6, B9, C10 and Porky.
Gidget was asleep in his bed, snoring softly. He had a long day yesterday and was super comfortable in his bed. The weather was really hot outside yesterday, and he had mined all day. He softly perked his ears, hearing some commotion outside. He slowly opened his eyes and gave a giant yawn, stretching his maw wide as he did so. He slowly got up and stretched, his green eyes scanning the room. Everyone still asleep. He sighed annoyed and stood up, making his way to the door to go outside and see what was going on.
A6 ran back to the camp and right into the sleeping quarters as he busts right through the door as he pants heavily, his hands on his knees, getting his breath back. Hey, wake up, there is something happening near camp. Get up now, you lazy asses, he says as he shouts at them to wake up and come with him urgently.
Gidget jumped as he nearly ran into A6, causing him to squeak loudly in alarm. He nodded silently and grabbed his pickaxe and cloak, going around to the beds and waking everyone up. As this was urgent, he had no clue what was going on, but knew it couldn't be good if A6 needed everyone, and right now.
Porky awakens, but lazily looks at A6 with glassy eyes. What? He rubs his eyes, then puts on his glasses and sits up. His reclined position reveals his ass, still loose from his most recent session with Deacon. I don't think I'm ready for another round yet.
A6 looked a bit worried and looked around to make sure everyone was up. Gidget, go get some spears, he says with a strong voice as he moves over to Porky to wake him up. This is not the ass fucking time, Porky. Get up, there is trouble outside the camp, come on. A6 then grabs a bucket of water and throws it over Porky.
Porky fumbles awkwardly out of the bed. He snorts in a panic as he hits the ground. Hey, what's going on? Was that unnecessary? His last sentence trails off as he bites his tongue. He slides into his now wet attire, even more revealing now that it's soaked through.
The commotion wakes up C10, a relatively new recruit much like Gidget, who's dressed in nothing but his own scales. He springs up into action, presenting his bare ass to who he assumes must be a drill sergeant he's yet to please. Yes, sir. C10 ready to see on serve.
Gidget nodded yes, sir. He then made his way over to the spears in the weapon placement and grabbed 20 spears, in case they needed extra. He then made his way back to A6 and handed him one. He then makes his way around to the other kobolds, handing them each one, and placing the rest at the front of the room. Gidget noticed how few of the kobolds were bare naked and he blushed softly, a very small bulge appearing under his cloak as this was not the time to get turned on.
Porky's eyes shrink as he holds the spear lightly. It's been a while since he did actual combat, especially on so little sleep. He's been busy, yes really. He pokes the tip with his finger and lets out a little squeal before shoving the digit in his mouth to conceal the incidental scrape.
A6 rolls his eyes, seeing everyone barely up as he grunts, alright, I know this is sudden, but we need to head to the west side of camp. There is some sort of strange energy and light in that area, and I get that you're just awake, but we need to go. After this, you guys can have a round on my ass later, but after we get this done, so let's go. A6 says, running out.
Unlike Gidget, C10 was rocking a throbbing bit of morning wood. This nymphomaniac might have been new to the scene, but he's a quick learner. Running over to the tall, rounded Porky and eagerly ripped the kobold's hand out of his own mouth, placing his injured index finger around his tongue, suckling on it with a light bobbing of his head. MMMPH let me do that for yow, C10 mumbles with his tongue amidst Porky's finger.
Gidget noticed the two kobolds doing a very questionable action, and it made a small chub grow to his full 8 inches. He blushed madly and shook his head to get the lewd thoughts out of his head. He followed A6 and tried to hide his massive throbbing boner, because this was the utmost inappropriate time to have won. He hated himself for his large libido, but he hadn't done it with anyone in the camp yet, since he was fairly new. But today, the air was just different, and it made him feel super weird, and even more horny than normal.
Porky blushes hard, not sure how to react. A little strand of drool hangs out of his mouth as he lets C10 demonstrate his oral skills. Thanks, he says quickly before yanking his finger back. It's really fine, thanks. His member betrayed his thoughts, made even more obvious in the dripping outfit thanks to A6. He tries to glare at the bold, but it comes off too weak to be registered as such. He follows Yes, A6.
A6 finally made it to the edge of the camp as I then point to everyone to hide in the bushes as we got a better look. Okay, let's take a look. A6 says as he peeks over the bush and pressing my ass right against Gidget by mistake as I see what this glowing effect was. Looks like a portal. Okay, this may be very bad.
The previously entranced kobold snaps out of his newly acquired instinctual responsive suckling and pays attention to his surroundings. Standing at attention didn't seem necessary, but it's the stance he took, eyeing his fellow cabin mates for a clue of the scene unfolding around him. The constant pacing just wasn't doing it for this self-diagnosed oct freak. The tension surging from the disorganization brought out something he hadn't expected. People listen, he hollers flamboyantly, listen to your leaders. Guys, dang it.
Porky snaps up from the sharp command. His stance suddenly becomes very proud, although his face doesn't follow suit. The sudden motion also induced an undignified bounce in his gut and whipped water droplets onto C10. He quickly looks away.
Gidget hid in the bushes with A6 and blushing madly as he felt A6 single quote his ass right against his massive boner. He blushed more and tried to hold his composure, but his plump ass against him made him go mad. He softly grinned against the plump ass in front of him watching the portal. I severely hope nothing comes out of that portal, but maybe we should send some guards to stand near it, watching if anything comes out. But I have a question. Do you feel really horny right now?
Porky tries to avert his gaze, but his eyes are hypnotized by a singular water droplet navigating down C10's chest, over his navel, and eventually disappearing into his loins. He isn't sure if he's still soaked from the water attack earlier, or just embarrassingly sweaty.
A6 stops looking and toots around to Gidget. You actually have a good point. A6 then looks down to see his own hard cock throbbing as he's seen everyone else all blushing and feeling nutty. Okay, this may be weird, but it may be the portal giving off such a power making us all horny. But it may be just us as usual. A6 then turns around again to see the portal ass against Gidget's own face this time.
B9 stops onto the scene, his head on the swivel. His face grows disgust at the absolute disarray of the others. So not only are you all not servicing the queen like you should be at this time this morning, but you failed to notify either Deacon, the queen, nor me about this. He shouts at the gaggle of kobolds while motioning to the swirling portal.
The portal made us. Porky stutters sheepishly as he turns around and instinctively gets into a punishment position, letting his hole be revealed to B9.
The scaly boy shouts to the assertive B9, someone who he's familiarized himself with by now. Hey sugar, I know you were probably distracted by my plump ass, but maybe you could stop to notice the I don't know giant fucking portal?
Gasps and turns to see B9. B9. He then comes closer to him and stands straight. I apologize, B9. This is my fault. I woke the others to this area as something was happening. I take full responsibility. This is my fault. I had to do what was needed to protect our home.
C9 can only stare incredulously at Porky and C10. I swear it's like living with children. B9 speaking to A6, you can take responsibility for your inaction by notifying the queen and the others now.
But the portal, something is coming through and we can't afford to have an attack. We have to do something.
Sir, we kinda need him here. We wouldn't have even known if he hadn't shown up, so he drifts off, unable to keep eye contact.
Gidget blushed more and nodded yay. This portal is really fucking weird, no shit. Gidget stood up and his boner slowly deflated as the general talked to A6. Sir, this portal came from nowhere and we need to figure out the best solution to get rid of it.
Calypso wasn't able to fully see her surrounding clearly, not until the spell had finally completed. At its peak, the portal's blue glow became bright enough to be blinding for a second or more, followed soon after by the boom of thunder ripping out across the area, leaving a thick, dark blue cloud of smoke in between the stone pillars of the gate. No more glow, but a dark figure, for sure. The mortal realm once again, echoed a feminine but deep voice, its sound wispy like, cutting through the air as if distance didn't matter. The figure lifted its arms out to the side, stepping forward to slowly leaving the smoke at first, glowing, lightning like blue shapes could be seen across those limbs, until the demon's full figure came into view, with her skull mask on, and dark blue ripped cloth covering her loins and breasts. The much taller figure would be gloating proudly with closed eyes as she continued, and now, I reward myself with the delicious essence of its only at this moment would Calypso open her eyes, and droop her expression, flopping her arms to the sides, staring at the collection of scaled kobolds down the steps by the bushes, arguing, her misty voice lost. Kobolds, you kobolds, perking an eyebrow, putting one hand on her waist as she leaned to one side.
B9 just face palms in frustration. Great, just what we need, an attack by some unknown force. Alright, we do need you here then, A6. As for you lady, B9 leves a spear in Calypso's direction. Go back through your freaky portal thing before me and these boys here get upset.
Eyes wide as I point my spear at the figure coming through as I started to shake a bit as I knew something was happening. I bloody told you guys.
Porky jumps into the bush with the others. His above-average weight topples over the others. He sinks into the plump kobold pile. Eep, get down.
Gidget growled and ran up to the strange woman, holding the spear up to her chest. his teeth showing in a low growl emanating from his maw. Who the fuck are you and what the hell are you doing here? Gidget sunk his claws into the ground, ready to fight to protect his friends and queen.
B9 agitated at Gidget, trying to once again show him up. Stands alongside with Gidget with spear raised. What the blue one said. Who are you?
Perks one of her eyebrows, eyeing the spear pointed in her direction up and down as the kobold Gidget pointed it up at her breasts. Taking her hand from her waist, she grasped the wooden kobold-made spear with her palm, and squeezed it with strength worthy of jacking off huge demons for fun every day, till it cracked between her fingers, catching the broken end with that same hand, before resting that wrist of hers back onto her hips, staring down at Gidget through her skull mask. You might as well get the others out of hiding. I can practically smell the sexual tension from here, she said, rolling her eyes and looking to the side, thinking to herself, she wanted some horny fresh human sorcerer, but instead she has 4 trouble-making kobolds. How to turn this into her favor? A smirk grew across her face, as she perked her nose to smile down at the 2 kobolds in front of her. Don't fret, I come peacefully enough. With a wave of her free hand, that skull mask would drift away into dust, letting her long purple to violet hair flow down to her shoulders, and allowing those bright, large, cyan eyes to stare more intently at the kobolds before her. Placing both hands on her knees, she'd bend over, to be more at Gidget's height, hovering just above his nose, smirk and squinted eyes apparent. Who's the leader here? You know, the alpha. One of you? Surely, she spoke with a soft voice now.
Porky instinctively stands up when commanded to come out of hiding by such a domineering voice. The obedience of a chubby sub is without question after all, but that also means he's given away everyone's hiding spot.
Blinks and shakes a little seeing her. She was not even scared. She knew what she was doing as I stepped closer to back up B9 and Gidget. This is bad, guys. Something feels off about this, like, really bad.
Sensing a possibility of a useful asset to the Queen, B9 steps forth. We are but humble servants of Her Majesty, and you are trespassing upon her land. However, you do seem to have a unique set of skills that our Queen would be very interested in. B9 lowers his spear ever so slightly and motions to Gidget. This one is the Queen's most favored. What say you, brother Gidget? You think this witch might be of use to our glorious leader?
Gidget shook violently as the large female broke the spear in her hands, and then stared down in his direction, causing his cock to flare up in fear and excitement. Yes, absolutely. But shouldn't we see what her intentions are before showing her the Queen? He whispered softly to B9, and to keep her safe.
B9 smirks, thinking this may be a way for him to deal with a single quote rival. He whispers back softly to Gidget, yes we should, so let me handle this outsider. B9 speaks clearly to the woman Calypso with his arms wide. My fellow brother here makes a good point, outsider. You hear by extraordinary means, I assume your intentions are just as extraordinary as well. B9 saunters up to Calypso, trying to maintain a stance of total confidence.
Remains bent forward with her hands on her knees, but lifts her large eyes above Gidget's head so she can see the other kobolds coming out into the clearing, smirking still, but internally hoping she can pull this off. She knows her strongest asset here is their lack of information about her. Her smirk droops to a glare when B9 steps forward and claims she is trespassing. She wouldn't admit it, but she's dying to nut. It was the point in coming here, but she wasn't expecting a bunch of kobolds to be at the other end. No need for that now, little alpha. She interrupted Gidget and smiled widely as he suggested taking her to the Queen. Her eyes then moved back to B9 when he spoke again. Dropping the spearhead onto the ground, she would lift those large, clawed, glowing hands of hers up to grasp Gidget's chubby face cheeks softly, pressing the tips of the claws into them with just a tiny bit of force. She leaned up, and as she did, she'd try to softly edge Gidget downward, duo-on onto his knees as she spoke. He didn't pull, but she persuaded the position she wanted with her hands as she said, how about a proposition for such a smart alpha like yourself? Her smirk turned into a slowly growing grin, teeth gritted, towering over Gidget as she continued, her voice resuming that equi boom. Prove yourself as alpha, tend to me, and keep your kobolds safe. Her hands let go of his cheeks, waving one of them, as her loincloth and breastcloth faded away, allowing her dark-colored, uncut slab of 9-inch meat to flop onto one entire side of Gidget's face. And I won't burn your village down, she lied. Oh, and the others, I want them taking their tension out on you.
Porky sweat profusely. Mrs. A Portal Lady, B9 well. He scares me. Can I find another way to service? He glances at B9 and shudders.
Overhearing all of this as I didn't know what to say as I put my spear down and wonder what the others wanted to do in this situation, and how do we know you are telling the truth? He points at Calypso, wanting to know as he cared for his kobold brothers.
That meant no disrespect, of course. Porky's knees knocked lightly as his cock twitches at the thought of doming their self-appointed leader, which brought up another problem. Honestly, I barely know how to take my tension out on someone. Usually I just, he mumbles more to B9 than to Calypso, although neither would really listen.
Gidget watched and blushed hard as the large female pushed him slowly down to her thighs, making him feel very submissive as her large cock flopped onto his face. He squeaked suddenly and a large amount of hormones took over his body, and he instinctively started to softly suck on the large cock in front of him. He was excited to finally get some cock. He then started to suck on it gently, moaning as he did so.
Oh, he does. Does he? She grinned toward B9, extending her hands out toward B9 with one hand, and Porky with the other, flexing her fingers back quickly, gesturing them toward her.
Porky walked up twiddling his thumbs. He didn't dare to look at B9 knowing he just talked them into a bad situation. He couldn't help it though. It's just what his voice does. Really, I think it'd be fine if I sat this one out. His erect cock seemed to have a different idea. Maybe I could even tell the others of your arrival. Maybe.
B9 sensing the malice behind Calypso's words, and seeing Porky's hesitation, he snaps into the one thing he's good at, organizing this mess of layabouts and butt sluts. A6, C10, Porky, you heard our guest. Let's show her our best single quote hospitality. Line up behind our Gidget friend here and make sure you please him as much as he is pleasing her. Softly see to himself, B9 mumbles, and when they are done I'll plow Gidget's ass so he knows who's really in charge around here. B9 then slowly walks toward the witch, joining Gidget, his hips shaking suggestively as he strides. Oh, but we only live to serve and tend to the needs of others, miss. Where would you have us begin?
Perks her ears in surprise. She had almost forgotten about the little alpha on his knees as new ideas brewed in her head, till she found some soft, surprisingly eager lips planting themselves onto her cyan blue helmet, and then began to softly suckle on it. A good start, she thought. The meat confirmed so with a happy, strong throb in his maw, already leaking a good stream of prey across that tongue of his. She was clearly going to be a big shooter. Turning her attention to B9, clearly another dominant in the group, she had found herself another new target to play with. Once he was close enough, she'd plant her large hand onto the top of his head, fingers in between his horns. She did the same for Porky. Once he came close enough, tugging them gently till they were stood either side of Gidget's head, that is when she finally spoke up again. Your tension is hot to me, she said, gritting her teeth and squeezing her hands on their heads as she emphasizes a word, practically drooling out the corner of her mouth now as she speaks her next plan. One is a big boss, the other is a cowardly submissive. Why don't you show you truly respect one another? She tried to shove them a bit closer, so that their firm groins pressed right up against Gidget's face on either side, and their snouts were close together. Leaning over Gidget's face a bit, grinning with gritted teeth, she whispered, "Make out over him, and grind the tension between each other out over his face." Leaning up now, she stared towards C10 and A6. You two, get him deeper. Nodding down to Gidget, her heart raced as her horniness rose, heat rising, along with her dominance.
Porky blushes and clasps two hands behind his back innocently as he leans in for a kiss. His cock prods Gidget as his lips approach B9. His pose is more like a schoolgirl's than the seasoned whore he was, which is probably why he was popular with a certain crowd.
I nod and started to blush hard, feeling sweat starting to drop from his forehead as he watches B9, Porky, and Gidget together as she grabs hold of them and seeing her eyes lock on A6 and C10. You want me to what? Deeper. A6 looks down at his cock to see it growing from what he was watching.
I'm going to maybe wait for each person to reply first, then do my post.
Porky's cock wasn't big enough to completely cross Gidget's face, but his steady stream of pee was. The suckling snout quickly became home to a verifiable river of Porky pee, leaked out from a damp loincloth.
Gidget smirked and started to suck on the large shaft, moaning as the cock tasted so good in his mouth. He was so eager and so horny, his cock twitching like crazy as he felt Porky's cock prod his cheek. He started to palm both of their cocks as he started to suck, managing to get half the cock in his mouth as he sucked eagerly at it, wanting to make the gorgeous Fury Dom feel good.
B9 had never felt such a powerful swell of emotion before. His face became flushed beet orange with lust and excitement. His breathing became heavy as he locked eyes with Porky. Calypso's words echoing through B9's single quote's head. You. B9 heatedly rasped out at Porky. B9 lunged forward towards the daintily standing kobold across from him and grabbed him on either side of his shoulders. The words, "Make out over him," pounding through his skull, like a driving force of desire and wanton greed. You make me so. B9 pulls Porky closer to himself, urging Porky's cock over Gidget's face and kisses Porky deeply into his whole face. B9 forcing his tongue into Porky's own mouth, violating him harshly for his submissiveness. The heated mouth action causes B9's single quote's own cock to slide out from his sheath and joins Porky's draped across Gidget's face.
Porky is pulled off balance. and grabbed B9's shoulders to steady himself. The constant frotting over Gidget's dedicated snout was unbearably hot. Slowly but surely he completely masked Calypso's cocksucker in a nice sticky layer. His testicles' talent for producing seed was out in full force, eager to ensure a good performance for their guest of honor.
Narrowed her eyes more and more as she darted those pupils from Porky to B9 and back again, watching them intently as they leaned in closer, or grinded their wangs into Gidget's face. Her meat throbbed and vined up, thickening and hardening in girth as the foreskin rolled back over her helmet, and oozed the thick load of semen into the kobold's mouth and back of throat as he forced himself to about halfway, filling out those cheeks a little. That wasn't even an orgasm, just excitement. Good, she's got them. MHM tilde ha tilde. Now we're talking, boys. Letting out a classic cackle as B9 lunged for Porky, she'd let go of their heads and grasped their butt cheeks firmly, one ass for each hand, directly in between their mounds. As her middle finger prodded and rubbed at their puckers, she shoved them forward, burying their dicks firmly into Gidget's face sides. I said grind, voice deeper and clearly more excited. She finally could start drinking from their lustful essences.
A6 gave in and listened as he went right behind Gidget and grabbed the back of his head as he then used his other hand to spread open Gidget's cheeks to see his pucker. As A6 started to get full of lust, he presses the back of Gidget's head and forced him to suck on Calypso's cock more as A6 started to push his cock right into Gidget's hole, spreading him open as he could not contain his lust any longer. Ah, sorry Gidget, but I have to.
Porky's tongue responds to all the excitement, swimming around the intrusion by B9. He moaned and drooled as he became lost to the lustful nature granted once by his birth as a kobold, and now again in the presence of Calypso. He began thrusting eagerly, an impassioned, flailing sword fight between him and his lip-locked leader. He finally begins to release. The first shot hits Gidget right on the nostril, a second on B9's shiny belly, then a third, fourth, and fifth to wherever his cock deemed needed a dousing. His moans echoed through the kiss, and he pressed fully into B9's embrace. The thick remnants of his seed layered on both of their bellies in a messy glaze, and totally blinded poor Gidget.
B9 pushed further into action by Calypso's words begins to grind with Porky along Gidget's face while continuing to taunt wrestle with Porky. B9's cock stiffens both from the makeout session, but also with degrading his rival with his own tool. Pre-escapes from his tip, and it dribbles down to join Porky's own pool of jizz on Gidget's face. You always are such a softy porks. B9 chastises Porky, so quick to shoot, but I don't think our guest will be happy just yet. Before Porky can get to soft from his climax, B9 reaches down and grabs both of their cocks with a free hand and forces them to grind all over Gidget's soppy cum-covered face. A6, do your best and give our guest what she wants.
Gidget was unable to see what was happening as he is covered in pre and cum all over his blue face as he also feels himself getting forced to suck off Calypso while A6 fucks his blue ass and pushes head deeper to suck that tasty thick cock while Porky and B9 obey him to their thing on his face, making sure he gets a face full.
Horny little devils, so that's why I was summoned here. Ooh, good job little kobold. I felt at one tilde no need to apologize. He's preoccupied saving your village. She cooed over to A6 as he lined himself up and buried himself into Gidget's ass, forcing the kobold deeper onto her vined, leaking log. Her cock tip hit the back of his throat, then carried on going down his gullet, stretching out his neck a bit. Her teeth gritted and toes squeezed the dirt below them as she felt Porky's orgasm ripple out, over and over, making a mess of Gidget's face. But she had B9 there as well. She didn't want a mess, she wanted a coating, and she was pleased with B9, letting himself go like that. Another target. Ah, that's it. Show your appreciation for your savior. She lusted out, drooling a little as she spasmed, her thick cock throbbing thickly in the bulging gullet of Gidget. As B9 spoke, just as he finished his sentence, she'd let go of his ass and grasped his face, turning him to look up at her, as her mouth opened, and that lewd, bumpy, prehensile tongue slithered out from her mouth, and in the horny heat of the moment, she herself would lunge her head down, sealing lips with the kobold, and stuff that kobold maw completely with her tongue, squelching and rolling it around for a moment, before forcing it down his throat, and injecting him with even more lust, as the demon loudly made out with the kobold, grinding her tongue up and down his throat canal. Porky didn't go ignored. With this, she pushed him even firmer into Gidget's goopy face, and began to force one of her fingers deep into his pucker, as she squeezed his fat ass cheek.
A6 looks up at B9 and nod as commanded and pants hard, pushing balls deep in and out of Gidget's ass, making sure he pleases the guest, and obey his higher up, making sure Gidget gets that mouthful of the guest's cock as he pants and drools over his back, making a mess.
After he regains focus, he recollects being told he isn't done yet. Yeah, don't worry, sir. I can come like this all day. Wait, he looks and sees B9 making out with their visitor. But before he can mule out his jealousy. The finger goes in, he gasps in a tone reserved the greater moments in life, the moments where the thought, finally, this interdimensional Herm is taking my ass. He's compressed into a brief moan and lunges out like a howl at the moon. His eyes look weakly to Calypso, letting her know she found his weak point. Another small strand of cum hit B9's side, and his eyes communicate more fear than any words ever could.
Grinning wide in victory as she made out deeply with B9, possibly sending his own orgasm to wash across Gidget's already messy face.
Only posting this because he had to go.
The demon would pull the tongue free from B9's throat, flicking spittle across his face and into the air. The demon would then let go of B9's head, splatter palm into the mess of Gidget's head, and shove him forward, till his nose bends upwards against her crotch. As soon as those nostrils met her flesh, her massive orbs would tense up, and a torrent of thick, hot demonic spunk would fire and spurt directly into his gut. She'd hold him there for what felt like minutes, unloading her spunk into his belly, piling it up, as she rolled her eyes and curled her lips, huffing out blue smoke of relief, as she finally hit her climax for the day. Winding down and panting, beads of sweat dripping across her muscular, scaled form, the demon lady would finally pour out of Porky's ass, and pull out of Gidget's throat, still panting, and as she started to slowly fade away, she teasingly said down to the kobold, "Still feel like an alpha now?" as Calypso fades back into her own realm, content with the day, leaving those horny, goopy kobolds in a bit of a pile.
The end, unless someone else takes over now.
Penis here, penis there, penises are